Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and welcome to, well, my first build for the season. This is of course the familiar Bloodwave Necromancer that was oh so strong in Season 7, and while it has taken a big hit compared to that ridiculousness, this contends as one of the best, if not the best build for Necromancer in Season 8. The thing about it is, it's absolutely insane for killing bosses. I'm already hitting for 500 million with any basic setup, with a kit that's ultimately very unfinished. I've got a couple ancestrals to my name, some of it's masterworked, that kind of thing. You might be wondering though, okay, Bloodwave's very strong, but is it stronger than the new Bloodspear build that everyone's excited about? Well, Bloodspear definitely has a lot of potential. The problem with it in Season 7 was purely that it was bugged out of its mind. You might have seen in the patch notes 5 lines of bug fixes. Well, unfortunately, in Season 8, it's been discovered that a key unique, the Deathless Visage, has issues with the Echoing Spear's function, seemingly due to the whole casting tag that's on it, which seems to require direct casting of the skill for the effect to work, not working on, say, echoed versions. Ultimately, it's a new bug that means it's dealing a lot less damage potential than it could have. So while it definitely could contend with Bloodwave, it's dealing less damage than it should do. And based on what I've been seeing, my gut feeling right now is that Bloodwave is going to be the better burst option and potentially better build overall. And that's much more relevant right now when we're pushing into Torment 4 for the first time. Bloodspear as a build though will have this issue resolved in the coming days, I'm sure, where that build may jump up in power to compete, and that's when I'll likely have a look. But for now, I've started with Bloodwave and it's doing incredibly. Now, I mentioned that Bloodwave has been nerfed in some ways, and let's start with probably the biggest one. It's an across-the-board nerf for ultimate builds in general. As you can see, the bonus, while healthy or fortified, now goes up to 200% times maximum. So where you might have been easily able to get this over 500, 600, up to 700%, now it's up to 200% and you can't go beyond that. Interestingly, this means you can reach that 200% a lot quicker and then prune your build back to minimize how much, while fortified, while healthy, that kind of damage bonus you have in the build, and put it elsewhere. Another way that it's not as good as it was in Season 7 though is Supreme Bloodwave. Bloodwaves leave behind 3 blood orbs as it travels. It used to be 6, so that's a lot less blood orbs. However, we're generating a ton of them enough anyway to be fine, and there's new CDR options like the new boss powers to help a little bit. Another aspect that's definitely not ideal is the nerf of Kesami's Legacy. Everything is there as before, but it used to have even more damage scaling that's now just gone. So it's not providing quite as much power as it used to. Still, it's really good. So with the context of the changes in mind, what do you need for this build to actually work? When should you swap to it? You're going to need the classic fast blood aspect, which as you can see, I've got in my amulet because I have a bottom roll, or rather, I'm using a codex imprint. So there's no wall, you can immediately do this and put it on your amulet. You're obviously going to want to be able to scale your damage, so converting it into a darkness skill, using the classic Ultimate Shadow as before. You will also need Kesami's Legacy, which basically gets the build going. It turns the Blood Wave into this slam effect, doubling the waves up, so you're still going to need that. These drop from Zir, so I would recommend that you hit Torment 1, get some materials, the keys for Zir, and go farm him and get your pants. The last thing to think about before you actually run it is having a weapon you're happy with. That could be a item level 750 weapon, but ideally you'd put it on the first ancestral two-handed weapon that you find. And as soon as I found one, that's when I swapped to this build. Anyway, as you can see with this very basic day 1 setup that I've got going here, I'm in Torment 3, working my way towards Torment 4. I'm very comfortable in Torment 3, and I'm 2-tapping bosses that don't have iframes. So it's pretty damn strong. Let's cover my setup that's intentionally made this way so that we can get the build functional sooner, but we're going to optimize this and change a lot about it as we get access to better gear and, you know, play the game more. So it's pretty simple. You have Bloodwave with Kesami's Legacy and it turns it into this double wave slam. This generates these blood orbs, which with the fast blood aspect, when we walk into, it cuts off the cooldown of Bloodwave. Also, we're applying Decrepify with the abhorrent modifier on it, which means we're getting 1 second off our cooldowns cut off quite regularly thanks to lucky hit procs. So as you can see, I'm able to restore these blood waves to cast the next blood wave, and I have to kind of circle back into the blood orbs to get it back again. This is because it's a very basic, just barely functional version of the build to get me going. It becomes a lot smoother and more effective, more damage, obviously the more we optimize. But this is the ground floor beginning version, so I've made lots of choices to get it working that I'll walk you through. Let's start with the interesting thing here, which is ultimately the boss powers. Right now, this is the setup that I have that is not ideal. We have Uravaz Lob Bombs, which provides you with 15% cooldown reduction, even at level 1. If you're unaware, you can go kill the bosses in Torment 1 and then not even use the keys to open their chest. You'll still get the boss power because you killed the boss. What's not easy to get would be, say, Belial, because you need the ambusher to spawn and he doesn't spawn unless you open the chests, so a bit of a different story. With that, I also have Harbinger's Hatreds of Volley. You cast a basic skill at max resources, and then it makes the enemies nearby vulnerable. We have plenty of vulnerable sources, but it's nice to have this kind of guaranteed way to do it. Mainly though, we pick this up for whenever our boss power activates, it increases our vulnerable damage as a multiplier. Next to that, we have the very easy to acquire Cinnarat's Flames, which comes from the Incursion events, one of the bosses. It just increases damage with all elements, and with Bloodwave we're dealing shadow damage in this form. Finally, I currently have Flesh Reaper's Disruption, which is also another modifier for vulnerable damage, though I'd like to change this. An obvious choice would be Belial's Eye Beams, which comes from the full supreme, pinnacle boss. It is another way to increase our overpower damage, which is great, so I'll be working on that soon. Let's now go to the skill tree and work our way through that. You're going to see something interesting here. It's the fact that I've got Reap and Decompose as just kind of two quote-unquote dead skills on the bar. The reason for that, as we've talked about quite a few times last season, is the all-important change to Reaper's Pursuit. For each darkness skill in your action bar, get movement speed, but more importantly, a damage modifier, 6% times. So, darkness skill. We have on our bars, Blight, darkness. We have Corpse Explosion, but modified to be darkness. We have Corpse Tendrils for very important reasons that I'll talk about. We have Decomposed Darkness, we have Reap Darkness, and we have Bloodwave, which is a darkness skill thanks to the change of our aspect, like I said in the intro, Ultimate Shadow. So we're getting almost maximized profit from that one skill. That's why we have this. So the first 2 points just get us to the next tree, where we pick up Blight. It's another darkness skill, which is very important, but it gives us a way to send out a little bit of essence to apply Supernatural Blight, a 20% times damage increase. You also note that I only have 1 point in Hue Flesh. We want this lucky hit chance to create corpses because they are useful, but I can't afford more points right now, as we'll discuss. Anyway, next section. We have the 1 point in Corpse Explosion just to bring it to Blighted, also popping those to generate Fuel by Death, and it's also going to be evolved with Corpse Eater in the Paragon when we get there. Anyway, we max out Necrotic Fortitude to generate a barrier for survivability. Titan's Fall increases damage to elites while fortified, very nice. Spiked Armor is going to help us bridge the gap with our initial very low armor that we need a lot of. On the next tree, we have 1 point through Decrepify to Abhorrent for the CDR benefit of that, but it's not on my bars. Why is that? Well, I don't need it on the bars because the classic Cursed Aura. We do need the skill points in Decrepify to get the benefits that we're looking for, but this is aura activating Decrepify around me as I walk around. So I just press myself against the targets and get that effect. Anyway, as usual, maxing out Amplified Damage, Death's Embrace, the damage for close and damage reduction. We've got Lucky Hit from Precision Decay. Then we come down to the next tree. Well, like I said, we have Corpse Tendrils for a very important reason. Corpse Tendrils is going to allow us to generate Blood Orbs at a 35% rate on every target affected by it. So pulling in packs of mobs generates a ton of Blood Orbs. Like I said, we need these from Fast Blood aspect to restore the cooldown of our Blood Wave. And when all of our numbers are very low, we need help. And this is a massive help. So we want to make Corpse Tendrils as effective as possible. In the early game, running something like Grasping Veins aspect gives us a load of crit strike chance and damage, really getting us towards 100% very quickly, which will slowly work out of the build for better things, but for the moment, it's massively impactful. So it's double dipping on use. Otherwise, the familiar passives, we have 3 out of 3 Coalesced Blood and 3 out of 3 Tides of Blood. And then I dump 1 point into Drain Vitality and Transfusion. Drain Vitality means our blood skills are going to fortify us, very important. And Transfusion means that we have that chance to generate Blood Orbs just by using blood skills. Very helpful, again, for this early stage where the cooldown of Blood Wave is so awkward. Otherwise, we have the Shadow passives you might be familiar with, Reaper's Pursuit like we talked about. And then we have Gloom and of course Terror for improvements to the Darkness and Shadow damage. On the final tree, we have the Ultimate, maxing that out of course for Blood Wave, all the way through Prime and Supreme, obviously. Maxing Finality, which is incredible, increasing our damage for 8 seconds after we use each Blood Wave, so you want to get the next Blood Wave off fast, because it's going to be even stronger. We max out Memento Mori, because we're sacrificing everything. Can't afford more points into standalone, so we just take 1 for 6% damage reduction. We help ourselves with crit strike chance with Inspiring Leader, and finally, our key passive, obviously Rathma's Vigor. So we're healthy for 15 seconds, it means our next blood skill is going to overpower guaranteed. And also picking up Blood Orbs helps restore this effect. So all the ways that I'm generating more and more Blood Orbs through the skill tree, very important. Next we have the Book of the Dead, which is pretty much the same as it was last season. We have Reapers, Sacrifice for the shadow damage increase, we have Skeletal Mages under Bone for overpower, and of course Iron for the crit strike damage increase. Same as always. Next up, we have my initial Paragon setup. You have the starter board and the first 2 that I extend into, trying to get to those legendary nodes as fast as possible. Bloodbath for a massive increase to overpower damage, and Blood Begets Blood. We're picking up a ton of Blood Orbs. Those are now massively increasing our damage. The classics. Let's start from the beginning. This is how I've set it up because I need to prioritize getting resistance to all elements as we progress into Torment 3 and 4. I need so much. So my priority here is getting everything active, but I'm actually taking less damage nodes than I could if I had more points because I need survivability. Anyway, first board, Essence, as you may have expected, massively increasing the damage of critical strikes. And we activate it like so. But then we extend into the second board, which like I said before, is of course Bloodbath. I rotate the board like so we can come through Suffused Resilience, giving us lots of damage reduction and resistance to all elements. Very important in this early stage when we're very undergeared. I come up through the Legendary node, and then to the left for Thick Hide for the benefits there. Coming up to the Glyph socket, which is Abyssal, which is just giving us a 10% times increase for non-physical damage, i.e. our Darkness and Blood skill, Blood Wave. It works well here as a dexterity thing, and when it's extended we can be very efficient with our points, like so. But if you haven't got it to level 15 yet, then you can still get the dexterity nodes active. You'll also note on this area we have damage while fortified. This is very important, because don't forget of that scaling. We're trying to get to 200% at the current bonus. I'm currently at 112%. Once we hit 200%, we'll be working that out of the build, but we want to reach it as soon as possible. Anyway, this is how I set up that, and we come to the third board, where we're extending into Blood Begets Blood. I rotate the board so we can come through Recuperate from all max life, smoothly reaching the Legendary node as soon as possible. Then we come through Vampiric from all max life, and down into the Glyph socket, where we have Sacrificial, giving us a big bonus while we don't have minions, and also enhancing magic nodes within range, which is important, because again, we have more damage while healthy nodes to pick up, and there's also blood damage here as well, which, you know, when I have the points, I'll reach into. Then I'm going to come down into my fourth board extension, which is probably going to be Corpse Eater. But that's the initial kind of 100 point spend. Right now, time to look at the gear aspects and all that stuff. Obviously, it's very unfinished right now. I'm literally on day 2 or day 1 of this build in the endgame. So we'll just run through what I've got and why. We have Cursed Aura, which is giving us that Decrepify aura around us and then saving us the slot on the bars. Very important. We have Hardened Bones, obviously damage reduction. We have Ultimate Shadow to turn the Blood Wave into a shadow skill, obviously. Casimir's Legacies we've talked about. And then the all-time classic, Yen's Blessing. This is great. It drops from multiple bosses, and ultimately all we care about here is the resistance to all elements %. Even now in Torment 3, with all the dumping of that stat that I've got, I'm not at cap. So this is a massive bridge that helps. And if you can get a GA on that resistance to all elements, it'll carry you into Torment 4 for a good while. Obviously, I'm trying to masterwork and hit that as well, as soon as I have the resources. But yeah, it's a real helpful thing in this first phase of gearing up. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of extra resistance from elements, from ancestral jewelry, diamonds in our jewelry, and other sources. But right now, this really helps, so I strongly recommend you go after it. On the two-handed weapon, we of course have the tidal aspect, increasing the amount of waves that we're dealing, increasing the damage of them. It does mean that Blood Wave has a kind of internal cooldown, even if you reset it really quick, but the timing works out very nicely as before. Anyway, I'd love to have a two-hand mace, which would have the inherent passive of overpowered damage, not a completely useless axe with damage over time, but it's what I've got right now on day 1. On the amulet, we have Fast Blood. This is very important. While you don't have a good roll of Fast Blood, you need to put it on the amulet because it's massively impactful on restoring the blood waves. 1.5 here on the amulet is the bare minimum codex imprint. If I had a roll that was decent, somewhere between 2 and the 3 full seconds that you can get on the normal aspect, then I'd put that on a ring and then change the amulet slot to something more offensive, probably sacrificial. But for the moment, this gets the build working and it's going to carry me into Torment 4 no problem. Anyway, for the rings, as I showed you earlier, we have Grasping Veins to help us get to that crit strike chance 100% while we're using Corpse Tendrils. And then finally, Sacrificial for the big increase to the sacrificial bonuses. Next, we have the affixes on the gear, which is, you know, I'm doing my best. Mostly you're looking for intelligence max life and then some sort of perk. So let's run it down. On our helm, we have Intel max life and cooldown reduction, very important. We need as much of that as possible. On the chest piece, Intel max life and armor. I would recommend you look for a specific element resistance or all element resistance on your helmet and on your chest piece, as well as armor as the third slot. But with cooldown reduction being so important, that's why I've got that on the helm. On the gloves, it's Intel, in this case attack speed and crit strike chance. We want to get to 100% crit strike chance, so that's important there, but Intel max life would be fine. Casimir's Legacy, of course, and then Yen's Blessing. On the weapon, we have Intel max life and overpower damage. On the amulet, we have Intel max life and Coalesce Blood. For you, I would recommend Intel, max life, and cooldown reduction. What you're looking for is Tides of Blood as the passive, most important. Then things like Gloom and Coalesce Blood, they're great too. If I had like the perfect one on day 1, which would be insane, I'd probably be looking for Intel, Tides of Blood, and either Coalesce Bloods or Gloom. On the rings, it's the same for both of them. Intel, max life, and crit strike chance to help us get towards 100% crit strike chance. Now your initial tempering. I absolutely bricked this helmet, it sucks, but I was looking for armor on this. As you can see, I don't have 1000 armor right now, and we're not even in Torment 4, we're in Torment 3. Armor, get it to the cap. This saves you having to use armor in your jewelry like I have to do right now. Same thing for the chest piece, looking for total armor, but you also look at the second imprint here, which is Lucky at Chance. It's just the most useful thing we can get right there. Though you could do Profane Temper to increase the size of Corpse Central Pull-In, we are going to work that out of the build eventually. So Lucky at Chance is just going to be better long term. On the gloves, we have Damage While Fortified to try to get us to that cap. We're looking for that 200% cap. And then again, Lucky at Chance. Then again, we have the uniques we can't do anything with. On the weapon then, we have Chance for Blood Wave to deal double damage. This is very important. You want to get this stat to close to 100%. So at 55% plus the 36% we have on the legs, I'm about 90%. Ideally, long term, you would actually masterwork this Chance for Blood Wave to deal double damage almost to 100% on just this slot. Then you could save that and run something else as a temper on this weapon. But for now, as we're getting the build functional, you need this temper on the weapon. Otherwise, Blood Overpower damage is a great option, but we're looking for that 200% while healthy, while fortified bonus. And again, I'm at about 112%. So more here would be good right now, but the best alternative is Blood Overpower damage. And when we're at that 200%, I'd stick with Blood Overpower damage anyway, because we don't want to overcap. Next, for Amulet and your jewelry in general, we've got Ultimate Cooldown Reduction, very important, and then Blood Overpower damage, or damage while healthy or fortified, again to get to that 200%. So you can see that I've pretty much got that, except for this bricked roll on Blood Attack Speed, unlucky. That's my jewelry. In regards to Masterworking, get everything at least 4 Masterworked, starting with the Kesemi Legacy for Blood Wave cooldown reduction and Blood Wave chance to deal double damage. Then I go to my weapon, then I'm going to look for resistance to all elements and do my jewelry like I've done, and then my defensive slots and the rest. Right now, this is very sloppy. I'll be back to update this, of course. Okay, next, gems and runes. For starter runes, I'm running Sem and Zal. Sem is a generator of offering. I just cast Evade, and then 4 times later, I've got the effect, which is Zal, gain 20% max life for 6 seconds. Awesome. More survivability, more overpower potential. The other runes then are Zan and Gar. Cast an ultimate skill, super easy, we do that all the time. Gain a loaded crit strike chance, getting us towards that 100%. This is a hugely helpful thing in the early game when our crit strike chance is super low. Are there better runes to run when you've got the ideal runes? Of course, this is a great starting point, and that's the point. Then obviously for the gems, we just have intelligence because we're stacking that stat as much as we can. In the jewelry, we have skulls. If you're good on armor, do diamonds for resistance to all elements. It's whatever you need. All right, next up we have Mercenaries. I'm running Subo because he has this, Thrill Seeker. Your active cooldowns are reduced by 0.5 seconds when an explosive charge explodes, so we give him explosive charge and go for that. However, we got to think about the fact that we're trying to get functional and into Torment 4 and all that. So what I need right now is survivability, not that little bit more cooldown reduction. Everything I've got right now is enough to get away with not using Subo. In the moment, I actually much prefer Rahir. This is because he provides this passive, 15% resistance to all elements while he's about, is massive. Not to mention, you know, Bastion, that safety bubble, and the damage increases that actually provides. So I went from not being capped at all to capped in a couple and pretty close in Torment 3. It's worth it in this context. I don't have great advice for the second mercenary right now for the reinforcement. I'm just leveling them all up right now. But there are some cool things with Alkin and some interaction with Lucky Hit and Decrepify that we'll talk about next time, I'm sure. All of this essentially gets the build functional and running. The next stage is kind of refining it and getting everything unlocked, like my 5 Paragon boards, getting everything masterworked, refining the tempering, obviously. What I really need right now is more survivability, and then I'll be in Torment 4 no problem, probably later today. So I'll be back with a build update to bridge that gap and help you guys along very soon. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.